Ladies and gentlemen, at 9 a.m. yesterday, John McCain had stated again, quote, "The fundamentals of the economy are strong." 2 hours later, literally, I'm not making this up, at 11 o'clock, as we Catholics say, John had an epiphany. At 11 o'clock, John McCain said that we're in great economic crisis. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this boy had what they call a political epiphany, not a policy epiphany. This guy didn't change his policy, but he changed his rhetoric. I think what John actually realized maybe for the first time, he realized what was going on. That he'd be forced to admit, though, if he acknowledged what was going on, that the political philosophy, the economic philosophy that he has subscribed to and this administration subscribed to, that philosophy is bankrupt along with Lehman Brothers. It is a philosophy that got us to where we are. You know the thing I find amazing? Think about this administration. Name me administration in the lifetime of anyone, including the gentleman who introduced himself and said, "I remember every election back to Herbert Hoover." It's kind of deja vu right now, isn't it? Back to Herbert Hoover. Think of a time when an administration has denied responsibility as much as this one did. Who was in charge? Who was at the switch, as we say in my neighborhood? Who was? Oh, there was. There was. The President of the United States, the Republican Party, controlled this outfit for 8 years, 5 of which they controlled the Congress. And all of a sudden, it's my goodness, there's greed on Wall Street. My goodness, we need common sense regulation. My goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a simple choice people have. It's a choice between those who think that the marketplace and the corporations and the wealthy of America should go unfettered and have no regulation, and those of us who think there should be common sense rules to protect transparency so people could see, the ability to know where your dollar's going, how things are changing. Folks, if John McCain admitted the truth of what's going on, if he admitted what has happened here, he'd be forced to stop doing the same things over and over again. What is John McCain proposing to get us out of this mess? He's cutting taxes for the wealthy, causing us to borrow money from China to pay for those, literally. Where do you think we get the money? Where do you think we get the money? The Chinese come and buy treasury bills. That allows us to finance giving tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans. He continues to think we should spend $10 billion a month in Iraq when the Iraqis have an $80 billion surplus from the oil they're selling us. He continues to insist on oil, that we borrow more money from the Chinese to pay to the Saudis to buy their oil. That's how we're doing it, folks. That is literally the reality. We owe them $1 trillion overseas. When this all started, these guys have rung up a foreign debt in the last 8 years that's larger than the entire foreign debt the United States of America is owed all the way up to the 44th president. And these guys telling us they're going to change. Look, you know, if John cares so much about this now, where was he a week ago? Where was he a month ago? Where was he 5 years ago? I'll tell you where he was. He was bragging to the folks on Wall Street, the executives, who now he calls greedy. He was bragging to them how we're going to shred the regulation that fetters them, that ties them down. Remember that scene in this administration where a bunch of folks, I think it was at Commerce Department or maybe it was Treasury, took out a chainsaw. They had it on TV, a chainsaw, and cut through this whole batch of regulations. Well, they were cutting your bone and sinew. They were cutting right through the very things that protected ordinary people on Main Street. Ordinary people who invested thinking that their small investments were going to be secure. You know, if that's your measure of progress, what we're seeing now, you can see why John McCain believes what he said, and he said, quote, we have made great progress economically during the Bush years. As again we say, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Give me a break. We have made, seriously, that's his comment. We have made great economic progress during the Bush years. Look, friends, I could walk from here to Cleveland, and I wouldn't run into a single person who thought we made great economic progress in the last 8 years, unless I ran into John McCain on the way. And by the way, what did John McCain and Sarah Palin have to say? I assume Sarah Palin, I'm not sure. I'm not being facetious. I don't know. I assume she agrees with John, so that's why I say that. I want to be completely honest about this. That's why John McCain, when he talked about the housing crisis, what did he say? It's the cause of the large part of the reason why we're in so much in trouble, these subprime loans. John said, and I quote, "I will fight for those who lost their real estate investments." Well, ladies and gentlemen, he went on to say, it's not the role of government, to bail out big banks or small borrowers. What about small borrowers? What about homeowners? What about the people who don't invest in their homes but actually live in their homes? Live in their homes. Folks, look, there's an important distinction. There's an important distinction that John and the Republicans missed this year between the predators and the preyed upon. They're two different classes of people. You know, even though John has said that to the folks on Wall Street, now again I'm quoting him, I'm always, this is in the Wall Street Journal, when asked, John said, I'm always for less regulation. Here now John says he's going to go on and crack down on the greed on Wall Street, the greed of American corporations. This election presents two simple, stark choices between two philosophies. One says that the markets and the big corporations can do whatever they want because the free market has free license, and if you give it to them, everything's going to be all right on Main Street. There's a second philosophy. The other one said we should have common sense oversight that looks out for middle-class families, that looks at what Wall Street is doing, what effect it will have on Main Street. Ladies and gentlemen, here's what Barack Obama and I would do and what we've worked for. On March of 2007, Barack Obama wrote to the Secretary of Treasury, Paulson, and the chairman of the Fed, warning of the growing subprime loan problem. Nothing was done. We would have clamped down on predatory lending, but instead, what did they do? They told your Attorney General in the state of Delaware, my Attorney General happens to be my son in the state of Delaware. They said, you no longer have any authority to sue a national bank that engages in predatory lending. Ladies and gentlemen, what have they done? We would have passed by now if we had the White House. The Obama plan, which is called the Stop Fraud Act, which puts some teeth in the ability of us to regulate these excesses. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what we will do. What we will do to get us out of here, because what happened yesterday, where I come from, tell me what you're going to do today. Tell me how you're going to solve the problem. Well, here's how we're going to solve it. We're going to create more jobs. We're going to create 2 million jobs just by reinvesting in new sewer systems, water, ports, airports, providing good jobs to people, encouraging people to stay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to create 5 million new jobs, new green jobs, by creating wind and energy and the things that we can in fact do. Good paying jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to help families stay in their homes. We're going to change the law. Right now, a bankruptcy court can take away everything, but they can't say to the bank, you know, they owe you $60,000 on the mortgage. We're going to cut that amount to $40,000 so you get paid something and they can stay in their house. They can do it every other place. We're going to change the bankruptcy law to give people a fighting chance to stay in their house. We're going to see to it that people have affordable mortgages and get rid of the predatory lending. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to restore confidence to the financial system. And there's only one way to do it. As I was arguing about with the hedge funds, the so-called hedge funds. Most people don't even know what they are. Guess what? No one knows what they own because there's no transparency. The reason this thing is so deep and so long, it started with a subprime mortgage. You know what these things called hedge funds did? They went out and bought up all these bad subprime loan mortgages. Then they used them as collateral, just like you use your house to borrow money to send your kid to college. You used to be able to do that. And what did? They went out and they went and borrowed money, a lot of money, offered it as collateral, and they went out and did positive things. But guess what happened? When things got rough, all of a sudden they found out the collateral they put up wasn't worth a thing. The problem is there's no way for us to know how much of that bad stuff they bought because there's no transparency. Because they said, we don't have a right to look. Let me tell you something. If we're going to bail you out, if we give you an opportunity, if we give corporations the inside track, then you better damn well open your books to us and let us see exactly what you have. We better know what's going on. That's transparency. If you don't want our money, keep your books closed. You want our money to bail you out, then you better let us know what you're doing and what you own. You know, my dad used to have an expression. Every time someone would say, this is what I value, and people would, beat their chest about what they care, my dad would say, look, don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget, and I will tell you what you value. Show me your budget, and I will tell you what you value. Well, let me tell you something. Republicans like to use this argument about this is about values. It is about values, pal. It is about values. And there's a real easy way to measure this, an objective way to measure this. Everybody thinks, and all of us believe, I hope, that if we could, we should cut taxes for everybody. But we don't have enough money to cut taxes for everybody. So what do we do here? John McCain, in the last 8 years, by the way, the very tax cut that John called immoral, John is now strongly supported. Now, what do those tax cuts do? They give the vast majority, over $130 billion a year presently, of tax cuts to people who make over $250,000 a year. They're good, decent people. They're not bad people. They're not bad people. They didn't ask for those tax cuts. They don't need those tax cuts. But in fact, nothing's been asked of them. So John says, here's what I value. When we're going to tax cuts, I want to spend $130 billion on giving the wealthy and the super wealthy a tax cut. We have a different value set. We literally say, and no one disputes this except the misrepresentations of the McCain campaign. We say, take a big chunk of that $130 billion and give it to middle-class people. Give them the tax cut. So what do you value, John? You value the people standing here in this street, or you value the people who don't need it? People in the middle class need it just to get along. People in the middle class need it to pay their oil bill. People in the middle, and let me define middle class. Everybody always says, Joe, what do you mean by middle class? I count as middle class any family that can't go for 2 paychecks in a row without a paycheck, without getting in some kind of trouble. And that's families of 4 making $70 and $80 and $90 and $100,000 a year. That's not just poor folks. Ladies and gentlemen, the middle class is getting kicked in the teeth. We value them. The Republicans don't value them. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about values. We value keeping jobs in America rather than sending jobs abroad. That's not a slogan. We spend $20 billion a year, billion with a B, giving tax breaks to people who take their jobs overseas. We want to spend $20 billion keeping jobs here in the United States. So tell me what you value. Tell me what you value. You want to know what you value? In regard to energy, we're giving a cumulative break about $30 billion over 10 years to energy companies. The same outfits that have made, since 2000, $600 billion in profit. Ladies and gentlemen, they value giving them more tax cuts. As a matter of fact, John's plan, his budget calls for another $4 billion a year to the Exxon Mobils of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine what we can do, literally, not figuratively. This isn't a political game, literally. Imagine what we can do, investing that new $4 billion a year in alternative energy, creating jobs. Imagine what we can do, taking away that $30 billion tax cut and lowering the deficit. Imagine what we can do with the money they are spending And ladies and gentlemen, please, 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 please spare me about how Republicans are good managers of our money. Ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you what Republicans, by the way, this is not your father's Republican Party. This is a different group of cats out there, from Bush to McCain. Seriously, seriously. Think about this. When we left office, when President Clinton left office, George Bush inherited a $231 billion additional amount of cash in the till. When we become president and vice president, we will inherit at a minimum a debt just for the year before we were elected of over $400 billion. They have driven up the national debt to $8 trillion. Ladies and gentlemen, who are these guys? Where do they come from? What possible right do they have to say to anybody, particularly to us, that they know how to manage our money and manage the economy?